Hi everyone, welcome to our second session for the Guest Mentor series. Today we are going to be with Dee Mbugua, who is an employment lawyer, and we're going to be focusing on workers' rights. Hi Pia, how are you? Hi Lani and Fred. So a few more people coming through. Welcome everyone to our second session for our Guest Mentor series. Hi Araksan. Hi Linda. Hi Dee, how are you? So Dee is live. So I'll just quickly tag a comment. And I'll get Dee online as well. Hi Dee.
Hey.
How are you? Awesome. We
Can you
still
hear me
have a
okay?
fair few people coming through.
You
I'll
can hear
just
me
quickly
okay?
tag a comment. Good. I'll quickly tag a comment so that everyone knows what the session is about. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Can everyone hear me okay? Thumbs up. Can you hear me okay?
Now, I don't know about you, Dee, but here it's really cold. It seems like winter is here already.
No, it's really hot here.
Can we please trade places? Because I'm freezing here.
No, I'm bored. Hi Natsi. Thank you, Fred. All right, so you can hear me okay? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you okay, and I think everyone can hear you as well. Oh, Fred says nice hair.
Thank you.
So tagging the comment.
Hi Araksan.
There we go.
Hi Gloria. All right. Shall
So
we
I have a
wait
few
a
more.
few more minutes?
Yeah, just a few
You
more
can hear.
seconds, and then we can start off.
Okay.
Yay, excellent. Everyone can hear you and see you loud and clear. So this is good. A great start.
Yeah, it's my first program live.
Yes, well, it's our training wheels. This is our second. So a lot of technical issues at first, but I think
Yeah.
we sort of got a hang of it now.
Hi Jasmine.
Yes, hi, Yasmin. How are you? Awesome. All right, I think we can start off because we have a few
Okay.
people online. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Dee, for being part of this guest mentor series. I remember when I was
Hi.
thinking about some of the topics to cover, especially with everything that's happening, employment law
Yeah.
came into mind. And I thought, well,
Yeah.
who would be the best person who would be able to understand what's going on and be able to discuss this with the community? And you're first in
Yeah.
mind.
Thanks.
And I know you've just moved to Kenya just before the lockdown. So tell us more. How's Kenya been?
Kenya's been fine. I mean, I moved here just before lockdown, just before curfew. So I had maybe a couple days of normal life, and then it was just Corona took over. So I mean, it's strange because it's not the home that I know. Like when I come on holiday, you can go out, you can visit friends, you can go to restaurants, clubs, all that stuff. But now
Yeah,
you can't do that.
yeah.
But we live, we keep, I don't know, just keep doing what you have to do. So yeah.
Yeah, fair.
How's things
Yes.
gone back to ish?
No, I don't think we'll ever have like a normal, to be honest. I think we're going to have to adjust to a new normal. I know a lot of people have a lot of anxiety about going back to work and not sure what that
Yeah,
looks like. Because I know, like for work
yeah,
for me, we are alternating. So we've got two teams. So you have 1 week in the office and another week working from home. And so we're going to be
Oh,
trialing that out. Yeah, to sort
yeah.
of see how that works. But again, I also have this anxiety about being on public transport at present. Like, I'm not too sure I want to go back to that.
Oh my gosh, that's yeah.
I think we've slowly lost the network a bit with Dee, but it should be coming back now because it's loading. But just as a reminder for everyone, we are discussing about workers' rights, especially during this lockdowns and COVID-19. There has been a lot of changes that have happened. You know, some people have been made redundant. Some people have also been either told to stand down for a while or take leave. So understanding your workers' rights during this period is very important and very critical, so that you're able to understand what you're signing up for if your employer decides to give you a case or anything. So I think we've temporarily lost Dee, and then we'll just wait for her to get back. But feel free, if you have any questions or if you want to share your experience with us, please let us know. Put them in your comments, in the comment section, and then we'll be able to address them in this series. So I'm just waiting for Dee to get back online. And please do share, you know, what's been your mechanism during this period of time. Have you been able to go back to work? Are you still working from home? If you've been made to temporarily step down, have you been able to come back to work now? Is everything normal for you? I see Yasmin said, I've been going to work and been on part-time from the beginning of the pandemic. Yeah. So some people have moved from full-time to part-time just to accommodate. And has anyone received the job seeker or even the job keeper payments that have commenced at the beginning? So yeah, Ellen has also been using part-time at present. Has anyone been asked to, you know, take leave or even get any information? Oh yes. Oh, Yasmin said PT is public transport. I'm sorry. I interrupted that. Yes, public transport. Okay, so public transport. So Yasmin, you've been using public transport. Has it been really crazy and difficult? Are people doing social distancing at all? Like, I'm still a bit nervous about that, and I'm not too sure I'm willing to go back to that process again. So same for you, Ellen. Yes, public transport. Yep, public transport as well. We're getting a lot more people coming on live as well. I'm just getting Dee to call back again so that we can continue on. But again, feel free to put in your comments, put in all any questions that you have about your rights during this period of time. Do let us know. Oh, there we go. Dee is back. So I will add her back to the live session. Yes, commuting by car, Yasmin, has been another option that people have been journeying through.
My phone overheated, and so I had
no ways.
That's how hot it is here. My phone overheated on the other side of this room, so I had to move. Sorry.
It's all good. Yeah, we're talking about the anxieties of, you know, public transport around this time. Because I don't think, you know how crazy Melbourne trains can be. I'm not sure I'm ready to go back there.
Okay. Well, should we get started, or should we wait?
Excellent. Yeah, I think we can just get started now that we've got you all connected, so that's fine. Okay. Awesome. So with workers' rights, I know people say, you know, I think the saying is, if you enjoy what you're doing, you will never work a day in your life. But I think the person that said that wasn't a migrant, number one. And two, didn't need papers, because we all know that, you know, we have to do what we have to do to get where we need to go. So be it, you know, a job to pay the bills if
Yeah,
you're a student.
you can't afford to be choosy about what it is that you end up doing because, yeah, I remember my first job was housekeeping. And I remember thinking, I came all the way to Australia to clean after people. Like, it just didn't make sense to me. So, yeah, as a migrant, completely different life.
Exactly, yeah. And I know, like, you literally start from the bottom and then
Yeah.
get to the level where you really want to be, because it just ends up being there are no jobs at first. Secondly, your
Yeah.
visa might not allow you to work so many hours. So as a result,
Yeah.
you start getting, the part-time or casual jobs, or
Yeah.
even just a basic cash job to just make
Anything.
ends meet.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think one of the things that I experienced when I first got my job is, well, firstly, I was just grateful to have a job, period.
Yeah.
Second part
Yeah.
is now being told, oh, you have workers' rights, but I had never thought of to think about that, or even getting an
Yeah.
employment contract. Like that was my first time coming to Australia. That's the first time that I had an employment contract, and had no
Yeah.
idea what it is that I was signing. But all they told me is
Yeah.
just sign here.
Oh,
So what
same.
are our workers' rights,
So
basic?
I was just so happy to have a job. Same. I never ever like paid close attention to even what contracts I was signing. Never did. So I didn't know what the basic workers' rights are, which is, in state and federal law, you have the same rights, the same general rights, and then these become more specific depending on whether you're casual or permanent. So for the general rights, you have a right to join a union. So you have a right to join a trade union. Now, what is a union? A union is basically an employee organization that is formed by workers to advance their own rights. So it's formed in an enterprise level in different enterprises. So different enterprises have different unions. So, for example, you'll have a union that represents workers who work in manufacturing, in hospitals, in disability healthcare, as one sort of union. Then you have another union that represents people in the media and then entertainment and arts. So it just depends on, what your certain enterprise is covered by. But it's a collection of workers who are trying to advance their rights. So you form a body called a union or a trade union or a labor union, and you collectively negotiate your rights with employers. All right, so that's a
So
basic right, is to join a
yeah.
union.
Okay, so essentially what you're saying then is the workers, a trade union, it's not a corporation of employers, but more
No.
so people in the same industry, workers who want to
Yeah.
advance their rights and their
Yeah.
needs,
Yeah.
pretty much like against the corporate. So it's for employees by employees, basically.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So we've got a people who
And
joined. Hi, Joe. Hi, Nasyita. I hope I pronounced that right. Hi, guys. All right.
yeah,
Yeah. So
awesome.
basically, yeah. So that's one of the most basic employee rights. Another right
Okay.
is to have correct wage rates, to be paid the correct rate. So whether that's in your contract, whether that's in a modern award, whether that's in an enterprise agreement, you have a right to be paid the correct wage rate. Now, I can already hear people going, what is an award? What is an
I
enterprise
was
agreement?
about to say that because I have no idea what you're talking about.
So in Australia, a modern award is a decision by the Fair Work Commission, which has minimum rates and entitlements. So you have minimum wage in Australia, and then you have a modern award, which is a decision by the Fair Work Commission, which has the most basic entitlements and conditions of employment. All right. And then you have an
Okay.
enterprise agreement on top of that, which is now negotiated between employers, employees, and a union. So an enterprise
Okay.
agreement is basically an agreement between employees, employers, and their union. So in Australia, it's called it's usually called an EBA or an EA, Enterprise Bargaining Agreement or Enterprise Agreement. In Kenya, they refer to it as CBA, which is Collective Bargaining Agreement. It's the same thing. Same thing.
Right.
Okay. They just use slightly different terminology. And by the way, these rights that I'm discussing are relevant for common law countries. So like Kenya, Australia, UK, Commonwealth countries that practice common law. These are the same rights they have, regardless of the fact that you're in different countries. All right.
Oh, that's so, good to know, because I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
So Commonwealth countries essentially will have a similar type of agreement and arrangement with their employers and employees. Okay.
Yeah, so if you're in a Commonwealth country and they practice common law, then it's the same rights. So the worker rights I'm talking about now apply both here in Kenya and in Australia, same exact rights.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, that is something that I wasn't aware of, and it's really good to know, because I think a lot of the people that come to Australia are usually from Commonwealth countries. So knowing that you have similar rights in Australia as you have back home is very important, so that when you then get into a role, regardless of where you are, you know what you are entitled to.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's actually identical in terms of how the legislation reads, like the legislation here and the legislation in Australia. It's very interesting. That's
interesting. Well, speaking of the trade unions, because I know no one actually explained to me what the trade union actually looks like. And so what does that even mean? Like with the trade union, what are my rights within the trade union? How do I contact them? Who can I speak with to try and get that sorted? Oh no, I think the network isn't helping us today, is it? Well, I want to know your comments for people. Did you even know what an enterprise agreement is? Are you part of a trade union? And do you know how to reach out to the trade union if you have any workplace disputes? So just put through into your comments whilst we wait for Dee to reconnect again. Oh, hi, Farai. Welcome to the live. And I think we have a few more people who've joined as well. We're just waiting for Dee to come back online. Unfortunately, the network today isn't our friend. So we haven't been able to get a continuous live, but she'll be back shortly. So we're talking about employment enterprise agreements, as well as the workers' rights that you have, and a trade union. So a trade union is for employees, by employees, and it's per industry. And so it's important for you to know who your which trade union you actually belong to. I've been working in retail for a while, and I know that there is the retail association for the employees, and then with health, it has its own. So I think it's important for you to understand who your trade union is. I know, Dee, it's just not working today.
It's overheating everywhere I go. I don't know what to do, but we'll keep doing it until we can't.
Yes, we'll keep going. Yes, so I was talking about the trade unions. Like, I understand you said that there are trade unions in the different industries.
Yeah.
However, how do you even know about how do you even know which trade union to sign up to? You know, is there like a central place where we can find out more information?
I mean, so in Australia, the ACTU, the Australian Council of Trade Unions, would have all that information about which union would cover you if you have no idea. But what usually happens, I remember when I was like a casual employee back in the day in uni, we would have unions come on recruitment day to tell us about the union and sign us up. but back had no idea what a union was. So I was just like, well, I don't know. I'm not going to sign up. I don't know. But they usually will come to sign you up. So, for example, when I worked at the Adelaide Oval, they came while we were being recruited and would say, this is the union that covers you. This you should join. But I mean, there was no real information about what the union done. I started working that I realized, oh my God, I needed this. And because your full representation is covered by your fees, it really is the best thing you can do for yourself, because if you need to go to court, if you need anything, that's covered by your fees. You're not gonna have to pay out of pocket. So
yeah. And comments, a
questions.
popular comment people are saying is, tell us about who Dee is. So for the purpose of everyone else, who are you, Dee?
So these comments, who am I? God, what am I supposed to say? No, I'm just, I moved back to Kenya from Australia very recently. I worked as a lawyer and did some writing as well. Worked as a writer, did some freelance writing. I don't know what else to say. Give me a specific question. Hi, Basil. Hi, Uke. Hi, Abdullah. And Profound Wizard. Hi.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think well, going back to the conversation about trade unions, I know you talked about how the trade union actually pays for your fees, pays for your legal costs if you have a dispute.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when you join a union, you pay a weekly or fortnightly fee, a membership fee. Now, those fees are really low if you consider that if you need representation, you'll be represented based on your membership fee. There's not going to be any extra cost. All right. And so I represented workers in the courts, in the federal court, in whatever. If you're going to have to look for a lawyer to represent you in court when something happens with your employment, you have to pay them lawyer fees, which aren't cheap. So it just makes sense, if you're a worker, join your union, because again, your union is the one that will negotiate enterprise agreements on your behalf. They're the ones who will negotiate your rights, your entitlements, obligations, all of that stuff. So wouldn't you want to have a voice in what, what covers you?
Yeah, I agree. And well, apart from a trade union, if I do have a dispute at work, is there anywhere else I can approach to sort of, if I have issues with my employer?
Hi, Brian. If you have an issue with your employer, so usually there'll be an internal workplace policy or process about how to raise a grievance. Okay, so it's usually called a grievance procedure or a dispute and grievance procedure. It's usually in your company internal policies. So there'll be a way for you to raise a dispute. So usually it's a step-by-step process. So it will usually say, if you have an issue, talk to your immediate supervisor. If the issue is with your immediate supervisor, go above them to their manager, and so on until you get the CEO. And it should set out how long this process should be, a never-ending process where your issue is never resolved because the policy doesn't actually stipulate how long that process should take. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so essentially I can escalate it internally, and then so if in the event, I know probably that won't happen, but maybe I'm not confident or not happy with the outcome of that internal escalation. Is there anywhere else that I can sort of resort to say, guys, I'm having this issue with my employer, haven't been able to resolve it? Anywhere else I can go to?
Hi, Clem. Hi, Ofkin. So if you're not happy with with how an issue is being resolved, that's where the union comes in, because we help people dispute. So I'm saying we like I still work in the union, but unions help you, help you dispute an outcome if that's the avenue you want to take. There can also be an avenue in your contract of employment about what to do in the event that a grievance is not settled in the workplace level, which will usually involve dispute resolution mechanism. It will usually involve either being able to refer the matter to the Fair Work Commission or referring it to an independent mediator. All right, so there's lots of options. People should get advice based on what their contracts or what their enterprise agreements or awards cover. Make sense?
Yeah, it does. Hi, Wang. Is it Wange? Welcome. So in terms of, I think I'm getting a gist of understanding. So so as you said, there's the award, and on top of that award, so the award is just the basic minimum that every employee has to comply with.
Below the award, there's the minimum wage rate.
Yeah, the minimum wage rate.
And then there's the award, which is a decision by the Fair Work Commission. And this applies to Australia. It doesn't apply here in Kenya. It's a decision by the Fair Work Commission about your basic rights. And then above an award, there's an enterprise agreement, which is negotiated between workers, employers, and their union. And this is where you get your superior entitlements and conditions, because, for example, an enterprise agreement can have clauses on domestic violence leave, on more generous clauses on maternity leave and stuff like that. When I was leaving Australia, leave had become a thing where people can get leave to change their gender. So that those interesting and extra types of conditions of employment, if they're negotiated by your union on your behalf as an employee. Does that make sense?
I see. Yeah. Okay. Well, interesting you talk about leave. Is there like a basic minimum that's a leave that you require that is prescribed for everyone, or is it all subject to the industry that you're in?
No. There's the basic minimum, which is what's set by the award, which is 4 weeks for full-time workers. It's actually the same as here in Kenya. It's 4 weeks leave if you're a permanent worker. Yeah.
And then if you're part-time, it also depends on whatever it's prorated to how many hours that you work.
Yeah. If you're part-time, it will be pro rata depending on how many hours you work a week. Hi, African Phoenix. Hi, Rob. I think this is Robert. Hi, Robert.
Yeah. Awesome. Anyone in the audience who has any question about what we've talked about so far, please put through in the comment section and we'll be able to address it right now, live with Dee. Whilst we have the connection.
Kevin. Hi, 556.
Yes, getting quite a lot of people. Questions, people. We're happy to address them in this forum.
In the meantime, I'll talk about some of the other, because you'd asked about the basic worker rights. Some of the other really basic rights, protection from discrimination. So every worker has protection from discrimination. Again, this applies in Kenya, in Australia, everywhere. From discrimination to do with age, race, religion, sexual orientation, physical appearance, pregnancy, that sort of thing. You have a right to be protected against sexual harassment. You have a right to a safe and healthy workplace. And you have a right to in Australia, superannuation contributions. In Kenya, it's called pension contributions from your employer if you're a permanent employee. And you also have a right, if you're a permanent employee, to be protected from unfair dismissal. So, and the unfair dismissal actually applies if whether you're casual, full-time, part-time, as long as you meet the eligibility criteria, and that's when it gets sort of technical and you need advice based on your individual circumstance. But yeah, those are just the basic rights of employees.
Oh, well,
All right.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. And oh yes, well, I'll address Araxan's question, and then we'll talk about discrimination, because I think that's a very key topic to discuss, especially when you're a migrant worker, because I've had my own personal experience. I have family members who've had experience with discrimination at work, and sort of how to handle that. Yeah. All so right. Araxan asked, what role does Fair Work play, or where a union doesn't?
Okay, so Fair Work Australia, of the Fair Work Commission, the Fair Work Commission, I'm assuming you mean, is the regulatory body. So they hear matters brought by the union. All right, so they're meant to be independent, but the way that they're, well, how will I say this that I won't get in trouble? Let's just say, and I've been seeing the news in Australia about the Fair Work Commission being stacked to favor employers, but they're meant to be independent. It's meant to be an independent body to regulate the conduct of, employment matters. So they're meant to be impartial, all right? So that's what Fair Work does. It hears matters to do with employment. Unions negotiate with employers and bring matters to the Fair Work Commission on your behalf. Does that make sense, Araxan? Let me know. Hi, Julien. All right.
So Mama Kakaila said,
Kenyan trade
said, can you try get in touch with Kenyan trade unions and see what they offer, and see if you can work with them?
Can you get me Francis Foley's number? So there's the Council of Trade Unions in Kenya, which is it's the same as the ACTU, the Australian Council of Trade Unions, but the Kenyan version. They are the peak union body in Kenya, and their leader is called Francis Atwoli. So if you can get me his number, I will suggest that I work for them.
Another question. When should you seek help from union in case of disputes in a workplace?
Immediately. The reason I say immediately is because a lot of people tend to just handle their own situations and then mess it up. So when you go and seek advice, it doesn't mean that the union will get involved if you don't want them to get involved and talk to your employer, right? So at the end of the day, you're the one giving the union instructions. When you work for a union, you're taking instructions from the worker. So I'm not, for example, if you come to me with a workplace issue, I'm not going to contact your employer unless you give me permission to, unless you say, I want, but I will give you the advice. I'll tell you, look, this is what you should be doing. Don't do this. Contact this person, and that sort of thing. So you should contact the union immediately you have an issue. So too many people used to come to me last minute when, everything has gone wrong, and now trying to backtrack and fix it is really difficult when we weren't involved in the beginning. So as much as you can, get the union involved from the get-go.
So on that point, though, what would be an issue that you need to bring to the union, and one issue that you can resolve through the internal channels? Because I think that line is a bit blurry sometimes.
The most common one is disciplinary issues. So your employer wants to discipline you or you've been given an allegation or a set of allegations to respond to, either in person or in writing. So a lot of people end up responding by themselves with no advice from the union, no involvement from the union. And then you end warning on your file or you get dismissed. Now, the reason you should get advice is because a union can look at the allegations and be like, well, hang on, should we challenge this? Is there any way that these allegations can be substantiated? Are they just, full of shit? We can advise, and based on experience, based on legislation, based on other things that are going on in the workplace. So, and if you're dismissed, again, you have a short window to bring a claim. So again, we can advise you on, hang on, this wasn't a fair dismissal because there's no way that your employer could have substantiated the allegations. So disciplinary issues, if your employer calls you in for a meeting or a chat and says, we're upset about this and that, and you carry on without advice, you're likely to make the situation worse if you don't get advice.
Okay, so a best practice is just give your trade union representative a call so that you can at least have some sort of legal advice. Awesome.
Yeah, give them
another question. Yeah. Another question from Glow Jazz. So she said, it's good to know that it's good to know those rights, but what if we're not given the right space of reporting cases or been misused or bullied by our bosses? What should or would we do? That's a toughie.
So you're feeling, and this is very common, actually, very, very common, that people feel extremely intimidated by their superiors. One thing, keep a written record of what's being said and what's being done, because if you were to ever bring it up, you don't want to be relying on your memory, or you don't want to be like, he said, she said, this and that. Keep a detailed record. On the 14th of May at 11 a.m., my boss did blah. It made me feel blah. It was in the presence of blah, right? So you have those details, you have those records. In case anything were to happen, for example, you get disciplined or you get dismissed or you get discriminated against, you have a record of what's been happening either over the months or over the years that you can use to bring a claim if you want to, or to hopefully settle the matter, or one thing or the other. But it's very common that people get intimidated by their employers and they think, well, who am I going to go to if I can't even talk to an employer?
This topic actually strikes a nerve for me, because I had a family member who was working as an administrator for this company, and he was, well, the family member was the only Black person there, and apparently the directors had an issue with that, and as a result, that family member was dismissed from a role because the director was uncomfortable with having someone who's Black. I know it's the 20th century, but this is a reality, and it's a story that happened so many times. And at the time, we weren't aware of who to approach. We were on a temporary visa, and it always at the back of your mind, you're trying to think, well, if I put a dispute claim against my employer, and I'm on a temporary visa, what does that mean for me? When does that affect my visa application if I want to be a permanent person? How do I navigate that? Will the trade union be able to support me? If I'm on a temporary visa? Those are like real relevant issues that happen.
Yeah, that's something, the exploitation of workers on temporary visas or students, international students, is really, really common. And because they're scared that, if I report my workplace or my employer, I'm not going to get a shift, they're going to cancel my visa. That's actually not the case. You might lose your job, yes, because you can't control what your employer does. But the union can absolutely help you, because in Australia, the hospitality union, United Workers Union, it's now called, it used to be called United Voice, has a section called Hospo Voice, that they were helping hospitality workers who were students who were being exploited, and they were threatened by their employers. You know, if you bring a claim, we're gonna fire you, we're gonna report you to immigration, blah blah blah. Look, it's white noise. You should actually seek help from your union. And coming back to the issue about discrimination, again, I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen overtly and covertly, where, you know, someone in the workplace overtly discriminates against you because of your race. Like, you know, I don't like you because you're Black. That's overt. But the covert as well, that's not as blatant, but it's there. This is, again, why it's important to keep records, because if you keep a record of what's said, what's done, you can actually pursue that, whether it's with the Human Rights Commission, whether it's with the Fair Work Commission, because these rights apply regardless of your visa status, right? So these employee rights, the basic employee rights, apply regardless of whether you're a permanent resident, a citizen, a student. They apply regardless.
Yeah. So you've heard it, guys. It's very, very important. So regardless of what your visa situation is, you know, whether you're temporary, permanent, you're still covered by the employment laws. You have your rights, and it's record keeping is so important. A good way of record keeping as well is sending yourself an email, because in the court of law, that is actually evidence, sufficient evidence, because you have, it's date stamped, it's time stamped, and you can actually use that as evidence if you are having, you know, issues at work and experiencing discrimination. I know it's, you know, it might take some time to resolve it, but it's important that you keep the record and be as accurate as possible, because in the event that you then have to go to a court, you have everything that you need in terms of that. So record keeping, number one, and report to the trade union. They're there for us regardless of our residential status. I think that's one thing that I wasn't aware of at the time, and had I known, I would have encouraged that family member to approach a trade union so that they're able to sort of resolve. Because unfortunately, the sad reality is that that experience actually affected the person's state, mental state and emotional state, because now as a result, they ended up going to working in a completely different industry, because they didn't want to experience that again. So it became traumatic for them. And now, you know, working in a different industry, that's not even their purpose or calling.
Yeah, actually, so the other thing that's a basic right is workers' comp. It just came to me when you were talking about the trauma that your relative faced. Workers' compensation is a basic worker right, again, regardless of whether you're permanent, casual, regardless. And you can bring a claim even when you're done with employment. So even if employment ends and you sustain, say, a mental condition, psychological injury, can bring a claim even after employment has ended.
Oh, that's good to know. Okay, that's really good to know, because I know that a lot of people at the time might not be mentally capable to go through the whole legal process of, you know, putting through a claim and everything. So afterwards, it's good to know that you can still revisit it and be able to sort of address. Yeah. Another question from Araxan.
Hi,
Araxan asked, how long does it take for an individual's issue to be resolved by the union?
Oh, it depends what the issue is, and it depends on the individual. So when you have something like a dismissal, there's a very short window between when you're dismissed and when you can bring a claim. And so when I was representing people, those dismissals and things like that used to take first priority, because I know I have a very short amount of time within which I can the worker can bring a claim. So that would be my highest priority. When someone is dismissed, I would drop everything, focus on that, because you have a very short window. Then you have issues like underpayments or someone hasn't been paid, that will take a different amount of time, again, because it also depends on the compliance of the employer. So some employers, the union will contact them and they will rectify something within a very short period of time. Others are belligerent and they will keep dragging issues on and on and on until you take them to court. So for an issue to be resolved, it depends on what the issue is. It depends on your industry. It depends on your employer. It depends on a lot of.
Fair enough. So it's almost like asking how long is a piece of string in essence. There's no bullet answer to it. It just depends on what the dispute is, the industry that you're working in, and the union as well. Jurisdictions, I know, like state jurisdictions also apply. So that's something to sort of take into consideration as well. The network lost Dee again, but she will reconnect again. Any other questions that anyone has? I know I've seen Fred's question, so as soon as Dee comes back, we're going to then ask that question about the formal union arrangements, if you don't have one. So I think key takeaways that I'm taking from this conversation is, number one, a union is actually very important because they're able to represent you legally if you have a workers' dispute that end up going to the court of law. I know it's a small amount that you have to pay from each paycheck. I'm part of a union, and it takes like a very small portion of it, and it's apportioned according to how much you earn as well. So it's not like if you're casual you have to pay X amount. It just depends on how many hours you work. And so a union is important for legal representation. Record keeping is also important for any disputes that you may have, or even if you're experiencing discrimination. And also it's important for you to be able to then, if you have an issue, to call your union straight away so that you can get some legal advice. There, I know from experience, you calling a union doesn't cost you anything. They're there to assist you if you're a member, and the conversation is free. It's not like your membership goes up or anything, like if you decide to call the union. So it's important for us to have those key understandings. I'm just waiting for Dee to come back, but anyone else have any questions, or if you want to share your experience with us about, if you had experience with discrimination or had a work dispute that, didn't go in your favor or didn't go your way and you had to escalate it further, would love to know. So please put through in your comments any questions that you may have. So just waiting for Dee to come through. Oh yeah, welcome. I see Izzy. Few people who've joined in. Welcome, Shiro Ayan. So for the benefit of people who might have joined a bit later on, we're actually going to upload. There we go. We're going to upload this session on our IG Live so that you're able to actually see the sessions.
Hi. We're still overheating. I'm overheating.
It's all good. We should be okay. I was just reminding people that for the benefit of people who've joined a bit later on into the conversation, we're actually going to save the sessions on our IGTV so that you can rewatch it. And, if there are certain things that we discussed that you're not familiar, you're unsure of, you can leave us a comment, send us a message. Dee is always available. We can work with Dee to answer your questions.
Yeah.
So Fred had a question. What if you don't have a formal union arrangement at work, i.e. you work for a company that does not have unions? Is there such a thing?
Yes, there's industries where there's no unions. Then your rights would be dictated by a modern award or your contract. All right. So if you're not covered by a union, which I think it's I don't know how many industries those are. I don't even know which industries are. Maybe some government ones. But if you're not covered by a union, your contract of employment, number one, place where you find your rights. Hi, Dasandra.
Okay.
And then if you're covered by a modern award, that would be the second place to look.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And well, another question. What if I'm paid in cash? Or I'm doing an off the books? What does that mean for me?
It's legal, it's lawful to pay by cash.
Yes. Yep.
But what's not lawful is people who are paid by cash for the employer to avoid paying superannuation or pension contributions. Okay, so that's what's not lawful. But under the Fair Work Act, you can be paid by cash, you can be paid by check, or a deposit to your bank account, as long as you're paid either weekly, fortnightly, or every month. It can't go beyond that.
Okay. So those few cash jobs that are off the books, if something happens at work, that means I won't be compensated for any like injuries if something happens at work and I'm not on the book.
I mean, so being paid, through your bank account doesn't necessarily mean that you're on the books. So being paid by cash, on the other hand, doesn't mean you're not on the books. So you'd be on the books if you're an employee. So you're being paid. They're contributing to your superannuation. And so let's be honest, the only reason that some employers pay by cash is because they're trying to avoid paying any extra. So they're trying to avoid any records in terms of overtime, or to avoid paying superannuation or pension. So.
Yeah, fair enough. And speaking of super and pension, do I have a choice in the pension fund that I want to invest in or anything? Because I know when I first started, I was just given a paper and they said, okay, we need to pay you super. Here's the form, sign here. And that's what I did. Like, I didn't realize that, I actually have an option on where I want to invest in funds.
Yeah, the legislation has changed, and now you have a choice. You have a choice to choose whichever superannuation fund you want your salary to be paid into. Back in the day, it used to be the employer nominates a fund. But today,
I see.
Yeah, you have a choice.
Okay. All right. Okay. Good to know, because as I said previously, I just got a paper, sign here, that's it. Nothing else. We're almost closing off. Does anyone have any other burning questions?
Ask me questions, guys, before my phone overheats again.
Any other questions, guys? So it doesn't seem like we're going to have any more questions. However, I'll reiterate again, we are going to upload this session on our IGTV. So if you have someone that you reckon will benefit from listening to this conversation, please share with them. If you still have questions post this session, please feel free to send us, you can comment on the session. You can actually send us an email. You can send us a DM. We'll be able to address it for you. So some of the key points that I've written down here are, so number one, so there are different levels that determine the conditions of your employment. So there's wage and entitlements, minimum wage rate. So the awards provide the basic minimum wage. And then the Fair Work Commission, then I identify what the basic rights are when the employment.
Yeah, there's a question by Fred. Please reiterate how we keep records again. Okay.
Yes, so that's actually
about what's happening.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so if you want to keep a record of what's happening at work, you can do it old-fashioned, as in a diary. So, but make sure you have details, date, time, because I've used diary entries as evidence in court. It's written, it's it's dated, so it's contemporaneous. We can refer to it and say, okay, on this day at this time, this is what happened.
Yeah.
The other thing Charmaine suggested is send yourself an email. So send yourself an email, because an email already has the date and time, and so you just have to print it off if you want to refer to it, and you've got that. The other thing I forgot to touch on, which a lot of people don't know, is your employer is actually obligated to keep employment records as relates to your employment. It's the employer's obligation, not the employees. So they have an obligation to keep a contract, your pay slips, to give you a fair work information statement, all of that stuff. So for people who are employed and you've never seen your contract, go to your employer and be like, yo, where's my contract? Because it's there.
Yeah. And I believe the contract will also tell you which award you're covered by, right?
Yeah, so your contract will have information about, are you covered by an award, are you covered by an enterprise agreement? But not all the time, not all the time. I've seen contracts that don't have the information, but someone is covered by an enterprise agreement. So
An
it's
enterprise
important.
agreement.
Yeah, so get advice in
Okay.
relation to your workplace, your industry, all of that stuff.
Awesome. Well, some homework for us then, guys. We are going to dig through those employment contracts, understand what we're covered for, what are our benefits, review our rights. We're going to we'll post a link with all the information that we've discussed today, where you can get some of the resources. So do keep in touch. And I'd like to thank Dee for, being part of this session. I think it's been very, very informative. And I've learned a lot. I thought I knew certain things I learned along the way, but it's really good for us to share this knowledge so that you actually understand what you're covered for and what your rights are, regardless of your status. And we've learned today, regardless of whether you're a permanent resident, you're a temporary worker, you're a student, the employment law covers us all. So it's important for us to be part of unions so that we can get legal representation. I know we're running out of time at present, but again, Dee, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it.
Question, and you're too scared to ask it on this forum, you can DM us, all right?
Yes, yes. Please DM us as well. Awesome. Yeah. So thank you guys for joining us for this session. I think I saw a question from someone whether we have another session coming on. We actually do. So we have a total of 6 sessions. This is our second session. Next week, we're actually going to have Kemi Nekvapil, who is a renowned personal coach and international guest speaker. And we're going to be talking about personal development. And at this point in time where, everything is uncertain, I think it's really, really important that we sort of take time to self-soothe and also reinvigorate ourselves during this period of time. I'm really excited about this session because... Yes. So I'm really, really looking forward to it. So join us again. So we have sessions weekly, Thursdays, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Times. We're going to be here. We're going to have guest mentors speaking about several topics, and the next one is going to be on personal development. So we'll catch you again this time next week.
Great job. Good job.
Well, thank you for the conversation. I absolutely enjoyed it. So thanks, everyone. Have yourself a wonderful evening, and we'll catch you next week. But please, let's continue the conversation in the comments. I'm keen to understand, to know your stories and what you've learned from this session.
Yeah, let me know if the information was helpful as well, and what else you would want covered. We can discuss it in the comments, or ask your questions. I put a thing on my Instagram. Ask me your questions.
Yeah, awesome. No worries. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night. See ya.
Bye.